Now of the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, where they are having a moment of silence in honor of those, in memory of those who may have perished on American Airlines Flight 587 in the New York borough of Queens this morning. This was supposed to be a day to honor veterans. Instead, this moment of silence in honor of those who may have perished in a plane crash in New York this morning. Hello, everyone. I'm Judy Fortin, live at CNN Center in Atlanta. An American Airlines jetliner crashed shortly after takeoff from John F. Kennedy International Airport this morning, just about 2 hours, 15 minutes ago. A federal official says the FAA, intelligence agencies, and now the FBI are checking for any signs that terrorism was involved, but so far there is no evidence of it. In fact, the FBI now saying that there is no evidence right now that this was the result of a terrorist attack. We want to tell you it was Flight 587 en route from JFK's New York airport to Santo Domingo in the Dominican Republic. The New York Port Authority says the plane was an Airbus A300 carrying 246 passengers and 9 crew members. It went down in the city's borough of Queens at 9:17 Eastern Time this morning. Our own Chris Osborne has more on the story. Chris, what are you learning?
Hello, Judy. Well, I should preface
Chris, before we go to you, we're going to show you, look at these pictures, Chris. These are pictures from WNYW of the engine from that Airbus that apparently separated from the plane before the crash and fell into a residential area. One of the eyewitnesses saying it crashed into a boat. No doubt there was fuel on board that boat, causing a fire. The fire now out. Let's go to Chris Osborne. He's got more on the story. Chris?
Well, certainly, Judy, to respond to those pictures, it was certainly a very large engine, and the mayor said that he believes there to be 2 crash sites, and that, as you mentioned, Judy, that the engine came off first before the remaining parts of the plane crashed in Rockaway Beach. We're looking now at what appears to be the wreckage of the flight, that being Flight 587 near Rockaway Beach in Queens. These are from WABC. These pictures you're looking at right now, they are live pictures of the ongoing disaster site. You see there, it's near Rockaway in Queens, in the area where the plane went down. There's an explosion that must have taken place. You see that building.
We actually talked to a group of
These are tape pictures, we are now being told, of the disaster scene. We certainly know that 200 firefighters and 44 fire trucks were called immediately to the scene upon learning of the crash in this area. You're looking there at very, very large flames as firefighters and many other emergency personnel scramble to both evacuate people in the area as well as do what they can to put out the fire. We also have this development. We should preface this by saying at 11:30 a.m. This morning Eastern Time, American Airlines will hold a press conference. They have released a statement. CNN has learned of an American Airlines statement reading as follows: Flight 587, an American Airlines Airbus A300 aircraft en route from New York, as we've heard, New York Kennedy to Santo Domingo, crashed today near Kennedy Airport. The preliminary passenger list indicates the aircraft carried 246 passengers and a crew of 9. American Airlines will not speculate as to possible causes of the accident. At this point, no additional details can be confirmed. They do provide a phone number for family members who wish to receive information about passengers. They can contact American Airlines at the following number: 800-245-0999. Again, that's 800-245-0999. That being the number for anyone concerned about possibly knowing someone on board Flight 587 can call that number. As you saw again there, those were pictures from the disaster scene as firefighters and rescue workers and emergency personnel do what they can. Also, in terms of New York City, we understand now that the bridges and tunnels have been reopened. They were temporarily closed as a precaution, Mayor Giuliani said. We also understand that the UN went into partial lockdown, in part putting in place procedures that had gone into effect after September 11th. And as you mentioned, Judy, just a short while ago, both the FAA and also the CIA's Counterterrorism Center say that there's no specific indication so far that any of this involves terrorism, but of course that is a possibility, a prospect that is aggressively being investigated. So that being the latest development, the American Airlines statement and an upcoming press conference from American. Judy, back to you.
All right, Chris, thank you very much for that update. We're also learning that John F. Kennedy International Airport is now open for arrivals only. I have not heard any word on the other 2 New York airports, LaGuardia and Newark, whether or not they will open. However, our own Alicia Davis told us, she was at LaGuardia Airport a little while ago, that that airport was being evacuated. All 3 airports closed at one time. Now JFK opening for arrivals. arrivals only. This plane originating at JFK, flight number 8587, going to the Dominican Republic with 255 people on board. In Washington, President Bush met with advisors today, seeking details on the plane crash in New York. A senior administration official said that no threats against airplanes had been received and that the pilot of Flight 587 reported no trouble before the crash. The official said that the administration was considering suspending the takeoff of flights nationwide, but there had been no decision on that. Now, Mr. Bush postponed a scheduled interview with Russian and American reporters so he could monitor the investigation into the crash of Flight 587, which had just taken off from JFK International Airport en route to the Dominican Republic. A busy day for the president. He was set to, and we believe still is set to, meet with former South African President Nelson Mandela. Tomorrow he will host Vladimir Putin, the Russian president, for 3 days of talks in Washington and in Texas. For those of you who are just joining us, it appears there may be two crash sites in this incident in New York. People reported some debris falling off the plane. There may have been an explosion on the right side of the plane. Part of the engine may have fallen off into someone's backyard and into their boat. Mayor Rudy Giuliani had been on the scene a short while ago, keeping an eye on how things are going, and here's what he had to say a short while ago.
Just talked to President Bush and we talked to his chief of staff. We asked for air cover. New York City has that. I think you can hear the airplanes that are up there. The airports have been closed for a while. And I talked to the governor, and just as a precaution, we're going to close the bridges and tunnels for an hour or two and see if this is an isolated incident, which is what we hope it is. And now we should really focus all of our efforts on trying to see if we can find survivors. And the rest of the city is on high alert. The police are protecting lots of other areas. So at this point, we have no reason to believe that it'll be anything else but this. But at the same time, we're sensible and we understand what happened before. So for a while, the city is going to be on even a higher state of security.
Is liberated from the Taliban. The Northern Alliance hunts down the Taliban and their supporters, sometimes a man at a time. The Al-Qaeda house in Kabul, now where is Osama bin Laden? American Airlines Flight 587, what they heard in the cockpit when catastrophe struck. And finally tonight, pushing Harry Potter, the global corporate strategy.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
Good evening, everyone. The Taliban have left the Afghan capital, Kabul, and the Bush administration says the war is far from over. Kabul is now in the hands of the Northern Alliance. The alliance says its troops are now headed south toward Kandahar, 300 miles away, the last major city under Taliban control. In several days, the Taliban, the Northern Alliance, has gone from controlling 15% of the country to controlling half of it. ABC's David Wright went into Kabul with the troops today. David?
Peter, 24 hours ago, we had little idea that we would actually be reporting to you tonight from Kabul. And what's truly extraordinary is that the Taliban, who ruled this region with an iron fist, overnight seems to have just melted away. It did not take long. There was virtually no resistance. And this morning, as the forces of the Northern Alliance rolled into Kabul, the people took to the streets, including mothers and daughters who haven't shown their faces since September 1996, since the Taliban took Kabul. Zindabad, they shouted, long life. Kabul has been liberated. Literally, everywhere there are signs that life has changed. In the bazaar today, people did things the Taliban had forbidden. Grown men flew kites. People listened to music. And there were these young men who walked out of a Taliban jail and immediately did something else that had been illegal.
And this is what we're interested in.
They shaved. Barbers were busy today. Every stroke of the razor a political statement. Across this city, there were also ugly scenes. As people took revenge on the Taliban and its foreign supporters, a mob surrounded a jeep and went after a Pakistani prisoner. At the Taliban military headquarters, destroyed by American bombs, a shipping container now serves as a makeshift jail. It is filled with trash and with Taliban prisoners. By the side of the road, 4 bodies. Arab soldiers executed early this morning. Asked about the treatment of prisoners, the local commander just smiled. The people, he says, are angry. There are soldiers and policemen on every street corner, and everyone here seems happy to see them. This has been an extraordinary day. Officials with the Northern Alliance say there are some 6,000 soldiers in this city right now, serving as a sort of military police. There's a curfew that took effect at 10 o'clock last night and is just lifting now. And Peter, the soldiers look very carefully into the cars, watching for Taliban faces.
Thank you, David. David Wright, ABC's David Wright in Kabul tonight. There were reports of atrocities committed by Northern Alliance forces elsewhere in Afghanistan. UN officials said publicly tonight that more than 100 young people sympathetic to the Taliban were killed by Northern Alliance forces at a religious school in Mazar-e-Sharif on Saturday. Another of our longtime colleagues, the British Broadcasting Corporation's John Simpson, was also in Kabul today. He came across some extraordinary scenes right after the fall.
In the surroundings of the Intercontinental Hotel in the center of Kabul, we caught sight of a group of Arab and Pakistani Taliban trying desperately to escape the vengeance of the people of Kabul. A group of soldiers is hunting them down. Another one's bringing up some grenades to flush them out. They're trapped inside this building. But some local people have caught another one of the Taliban. He's an Arab. They make him call the others to get them to come out and surrender. And eventually it works. They're brought out as prisoners. This man is a Pakistani. The Arab gets particularly brutal treatment. In the jeep, there are other Taliban prisoners. This is the end of the Taliban in Afghanistan.
The BBC's John Simpson in Kabul. Simpson also came on a house where members of Osama bin Laden's Al-Qaeda organization are believed to have lived and worked. The place had been ransacked, but the reporters found all sorts of interesting documents, training certificates, and organizational chart. A business card from a Canadian company that specialized in flight simulators, and a manual in English with instructions on how to blow up bridges. Kabul's been a very unpredictable place for the last couple of days. A colleague of John Simpson, William Reeve of the BBC, was broadcasting live from there today when this happened. They don't know if it was a missile or a bomb, but they were all very fortunate, and no one was hurt. At the Pentagon today, the Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld said that U.S. Special Forces were on the ground in Kabul and in the southern part of the country as well, which the Taliban still controls. He also said that disarray in Afghanistan offered the U.S. an advantage in finding Osama bin Laden. ABC's John McCarthy is at the Pentagon tonight, as always, where I gathered from what I hear today, John, they are pleased and a little nervous.
Peter, Pentagon officials are delighted with what has happened on the ground in Afghanistan, but they also are aware that it is something that they are not quite sure of where it is going to go from here. American Special Operations troops were outside Kabul this morning and later moved with Afghan opposition forces into the city. The Pentagon signaled it would quickly make use of territory taken by the Northern Alliance, with plans to repair and use 2 airfields, one outside Kabul and one near Mazar-e-Sharif in the north. They would be used to bring in humanitarian and military supplies. Officials say that American warplanes are bombing the Taliban as its forces retreat from Kabul, showing no mercy.